The last fall. Only 30 human life forms called the hilly landfills, composed entirely of gray dust home. The destruction of civilization on planet Earth, as William Adams and the remaining 29 survivors knew it, began with a series of inevitable showdowns. First humankind versus humankind, then humankind versus nature, and most recently, humankind versus cyberspace. With its seemingly weaker opponents defeated, humanity found itself alone in a winner's circle, seeking its next contender, but somehow puzzled to find no readily available challengers. Will didn't feel like a monster, but with each of their elaborately designed black jumpsuits and masks, he thought they all resembled images of what primitive humans thought space creatures looked like centuries ago. Their wardrobe left no parts of the skin exposed. Even the oxygen masks could not be removed entirely since oxygen was scarce. Round, dark-tinted goggles allowed one to see out, but not in. He stood in the midst of the remaining 29 humans, surrounded by their residential dwellings, which were an enclosed group of metal, rectangular-shaped vessels. Once again, they were trying to use Atlas, a small communication device made of a simple black box that fit neatly inside the palm of a human hand. When functioning properly, it would project a holographic image of the person being contacted. It was their last hope, and one of the only connections to others who lived on colonies on distant planets. Long ago, after voting amongst one another to decide who would be their small group's leader, they chose Johnson, a man who claimed to be the oldest and wisest of them all. Holding the Atlas device high in the air, he now stood in front of them, gazing into each of their faces. "We will try again until we finally make contact with the others," he said, and placed it into his palm, and switched the unit on. Will felt a soft hand glide into his. He knew it was Audrey. Like many of the others, neither had any surviving family members, and despite being 10 years apart, he being the younger, they had fallen in love. Each shared many catastrophic moments together. In his mind, fate made it clear that they were destined to remain by each other's side. Earth or no Earth. Moments later, images of flickering light shot up from a tiny opening on the Atlas. The group gasped. Audrey squeezed his hand, and he could feel excitement pulsing through her gloves. Seconds later, an image of an unmasked man's face appeared. "This is the Kairos aircraft," the man said as his image blurred and flickered. "Have we made contact? Is this Earth?" Will could feel the tension in the air as murmuring around him rose. "Yeah, this is Earth." The device shook between Johnson's trembling fingers. "We need evacuation assistance immediately! There are 30 human life forms left! We've been trying to contact anyone out there! Help us, please!" The man's image steadied for a moment. "We confirm. Our crew has been searching for any remaining survivors on Earth. We may have enough fuel and supplies to land only once, in 2 days at the start of the autumn equinox. We can only accommodate 29 others, not a person more. Our colony is currently focused on populating the New World, and they are only accepting women of a certain age. All of your men may come, but women over the age of 25 cannot." The murmuring crowd behind him grew louder as the sensation of his heart sinking within his chest grew stronger. Audrey's hand slipped out of his. "I'm not going to be able to leave, Will. I'm 39. Nowhere near 25, and we have more than 29 people." Johnson peered over worriedly at Audrey. "I'm sure we can fit just one more person," he said. The holographic image shook its head and responded, "We cannot. I'm very sorry." The image cut off as it flickered again. "We will arrive on Earth about 3 miles north on the verge of night and day when the equinox begins. At that time, the atmosphere will allow us to enter. We must leave, and then prepare for our departure." Seconds later, the image disappeared entirely, leaving them all in a state of panic and chaos. It was all going to be over soon. If all goes well, they will finally be able to leave Earth for good. But what about Audrey? Will could not leave her there to rot in this wasteland alone. There had to be a way. As she gazed up at him, he imagined he could see her tear-filled eyes beneath her goggles. "You should go, Will. I have no other reason to live." "No?" He pulled her close abruptly. "I'm not going if you're not going." She continued to sob. He thought for a moment, and then an idea emerged in his mind. If one other person were eliminated, then Audrey would have a better chance of taking that person's place and boarding the ship. The idea he had in mind was not guaranteed, but there was a slight possibility it could work. It would be worth it to find out. He squeezed her gently. "Don't worry. Everything is going to be just fine. You'll see." Chapter 2. When the day the Kairos aircraft was scheduled to land came, Will found it difficult to decide who he would choose to eliminate. Over the past few years, out of desperation, but mostly for survival, the remaining humans forced close bonds with each other. Now, as the first signs of the sun brought in the first day of autumn, there was only silence and mistrust. The men were especially silent. Regardless of their age, they knew they would be rescued. There was enough room for everyone to board. Everyone except one. One person would be left behind. He knew he had to be swift. With their bare necessities, each person began to make a trek on foot to the place of departure. They would then wait to be escorted to what they hoped would be their final home. As he watched them leave the encampment, he slipped a glass syringe filled with a clear liquid between his palm and sleeve. Once a person was contaminated with the solution, he knew the person would die before they would be able to board. They kept such a poison in their midst as a biological weapon. Thankfully, he was able to grab a tube before they packed it away. He was ready. He already shared his plan with Audrey, and although she objected, they were willing to try. She stayed behind and hid herself from the others as the procession through the swirling gray dust solemnly went by. He moved in, not far behind, watching his victim carefully. When he believed no one was watching, Will burst into a forced run, holding the syringe high into the air and thrust it forward. His victim, a young man, spun around, letting out a startled cry, and leaped out of the way. The syringe missed and landed into Will's leg. Startled, the crowd already began to disperse, and a few pushed him angrily to the ground. As he removed the syringe, he could feel the concoction beginning its course through his bloodstream. Within seconds, a loud noise was heard overhead, and he knew immediately that the Kairos had arrived. In a panicked frenzy, all 28 individuals ran towards the noise, leaving him behind. He felt his legs grow heavy, and he tried to call out for help, but it was too late. He saw them hurriedly board the aircraft. Moments later, he watched it take off into space. They were gone, and neither he nor Audrey were with them. Using all of the strength he had left, he stumbled to find Audrey. She ran to him with outstretched arms and embraced him, sobbing, "Audrey, I'm so sorry." There were no more words to share. They knew it was the end for them both. His end now was even closer. They made the decision to walk for as long as they could in any direction. Will felt himself grow weaker with each step. After what seemed like hours, the terrain before them began to change, and they were walking across what appeared to be a meadow of low grass. They looked ahead of them and saw a sight they thought they would never see again in their lifetime. But it was a single tree, and it was alive. Many of its leaves were missing. The fallen leaves lay around its thick trunk like a sea of red, orange, and yellow. They moved closer, each taking in its beauty. They both knew it had to be the last remaining tree on planet Earth. As they approached it, they moved their hands across its rough and sturdy bark. Will could feel tears stream down his face. It was one of the most beautiful sights he had ever seen. In the planet's last century, trees of this magnitude were rarities. As he felt the poisonous serum continue to flow through his weakened body, he crouched and lay down in the pile of leaves. He knew it would be his final resting place. Audrey joined him, laying at his side. As she held his hand, they looked up, staring into the sky above in silence. At that moment, they believed they were the luckiest human life forms on all of planet Earth. The end.